Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. So I want to share an interesting insight about love bombing I had the other day. What do you think about this idea? And I have an argument with you about it, but I really think that why love bombing works and is so dangerous, it kind of turns us into kids, into little children when it happens, which makes us more vulnerable to the narcissist. So let's talk about that. So I really do. I was thinking about this other day. Someone was telling me about a love bombing story. I was like, I kind of believe that all love bombing makes us a little childlike. Think about it. Someone's buying us presents or sending us lots of affectionate messages, maybe hugs us and holds us or gets us our favorite foods. I mean, that's sort of the stuff of child fantasies, right? It ticks the boxes of being seen, cherished, loved, valued. And in the midst of those feelings, we might feel like children, or the way we wish we felt like children, right? There's something about love bombing, though, which is very domination oriented. So, in essence, feeling like a child under those circumstances only improves the domination experience for the love bomber. The love bomber sets the course of the seduction however they want it to be, and we receive it. Again, domination. So while we may be living our grown up lives outside of the relationship, going to work, driving a car, running a household, when we get that swept away love bombing feeling, we're kind of rendered into children. We even giggle and blush and ooh and ah when we're being love bombed. I guess it's all really sweet at one level. In our stressy lives, feeling like a child is wonderful and it's an escape, but damn, it makes us vulnerable. Our defenses come down. A sort of psychological immaturity may temporarily pervade us while we are being love bombed. Not in a bad way, but in a sort of giggly, let's go make snow angels way, right? So it's sweet, but it's also risky because we may put blind faith into the love bomber, like the same way a child would do with an adult. We may fall into simplistic child thoughts like, I'm safe, so everything's going to be okay because they're taking care of me. We may not be sufficiently self-advocating, and at least in this relationship, may lose some of our adult power because why? We turn into kids. Listen, I think it's wonderful when an adult feels safe enough to be able to feel like a child for a minute, to be in the moment in the way only children can, to be fully absorbed in a sandcastle or a game. But when children aren't safe, that's not a great place to be. Children have so little power. They can't file for divorce from unfit parents. They can't call and retain an attorney. So a child's lack of power, as many of you as survivors of childhood narcissistic abuse know, it's not a happy place necessarily, but it goes a step further. While this love bombing and feeling like a child can be very powerful, the other thing that happens during love bombing is that we start sharing vulnerabilities and secrets. And this is why those big shares in the early part of a relationship, especially during love bombing, although it all seemingly fosters this idea of closeness and intimacy, with a narcissist, this can be dangerous because those things you share, your vulnerabilities, your secrets, they will be weaponized and used against you down the road when the devalue and discard phases set in, and they will set in. Now, while narcissistic romantic partners are the greatest transgressors when it comes to love bombing, listen, anyone can do it. Someone trying to lure you to come work with them at their company or get you involved in a new business. They could try to love bomb you. A new friend might try to love bomb you. Even a family member who wants something from you might do that. Now, while romantic love bombing is the most potent and causes sort of the most, if you will, regression in us, anything where we feel like we go backwards and feel like children with a narcissist present is risky. Because when you think back to childhood, as long as we wanted to believe in Santa Claus as kids, we suspended disbelief. Because the alternative was a lot more cynical and a lot less magical. Mom and dad have to run to Target in traffic to get us some stuff. Not so fun. We all desperately want a little magic and a little childhood. I actually don't fully know how a person can be fully possessed of their own adult selves while being love bombed, right? I think the only way you could do it is awareness, sort of a hedge against getting too swept away by the love bombing because you're aware. and knowing you're being love bombed so you can pay attention to what's happening. So you can let your adult mind keep an eye out for the red flags while your child mind enjoys the ride for a minute. And be well aware all along that there's no sort of proverbial Santa Claus. Go ahead and make the snow angels. Don't share your vulnerabilities. That's the balance. When you were a child, like all children, you, me, all of us, we lived in some kind of fantasy world. It's what kids do. And in children's fantasies, they feel powerful and special. So here's what I'm doing. I'm going to share some of the childhood fantasies I was thinking about as I was laying out this video. I had a fantasy that I'd get a prize at school for being smart, like a medal or a trophy, something physical. Because then my parents would notice me and they would proudly display said medal or trophy. And then the other children would end up really liking me because I had this medal. Obviously, none of this happened. That was why it was a fantasy. So let me go a step further. Please don't weaponize the vulnerabilities I'm sharing with you. So when I was a kid, my folks struggled a bit financially. So when I was young, even something that cost like $5 was not a discretionary expense that they could ever manage. Now, I remember I had a comic book, and I read it like 100 times. And in the back of the comic book, there were advertisements mostly for like novelties and gags, like whoopee cushions and handshake buzzers. And one of the things there in the back of the comic book was a hover car you could make. It cost more than anything on the page. It cost $6.95. But to give you a sense of my child fantasy world, I believed that that car was big enough for a person to get into, and with its hover abilities would allow me that if I had it, I could get in it and quickly get away from the kids who were bullying me because I was not able to run fast enough, and one of them had stolen my bike. So I thought I could climb into the hover car, hit the remote control, and drive away for $6.95. Years later, I found the comic book. And obviously, I saw that it was not a car you could get into, but it was some sort of tiny little remote control thing about the size of a deck of cards. And I'm sure it didn't work. But when I thought back to that fantasy, what were my fantasies with the medal and all of that? Fitting in, being seen, escape, and fantasy. Those were mine. And for a second, think about yours. What were your childhood escapist fantasies? Because right there, that's where the love bomber could hit you hard. Think of your childhood fantasy space as an Achilles heel, a gap in the fence where someone can sneak in and hurt you. So based on my childhood fantasy, if somebody wanted to love bomb me, the person who would do it best would hit those vulnerabilities. They'd tell me I'm smart and I'm funny, and they'd listen when I talk to them. And Lord have mercy, if someone bought me a hover car, I hate to think what I would put up with. But anyone doing those things that play on my sense of belonging and safety, I'd be putty in their hands. I love feeling like a child. I'm sure all of us do. But be aware that love bombing kind of regresses us like that. So think of yourself as a child who also has the ability, if you are being love bombed, to also not surrender your judgment and your discernment. So play with that a little. Think about those things. And I have to tell you, when I was thinking about this video, I was like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot about the hover car. But then I realized what mattered to me was safety and escape. And I also knew that anybody who might be able to take care of me that way, I would regress and my monitoring wouldn't be as good. Think about that for yourself, and think about too, when somebody makes us feel as special as they do when we're being love bombed, we run the real risk of kind of going backwards in our mind and rendering ourselves vulnerable to somebody who's actually quite dangerous for us. Thanks again.